Yeah, you can start, Katarina.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon and welcome everybody. This is the second day of the workshop. As you remember, or the ones that were yesterday in the workshop, we focused on the contributing mission data demand and the data supply. And today we will focus on the organization of the Copernicus Contributing Mission activity. My name is Katarina Bams. I work in the Earth Observation Unit of the Directorate General for Defense, Industry and Space. I'm here with my commission colleagues, Jean-Christophe Gros, Thomas Johnson, Attilio Gambardella, Daniel Kentar, Gabriel Colm, and Thibaut Valentin. I'm here with my ESA colleagues, Henri Leur, Antonio Cicolella, and Peggy Fisher, and we will guide you through the afternoon. The opening word today will be done by my head of unit, Mauro Facchini, head of unit of the Earth Observation Unit. And the conclusions will be done by Guillaume de Labros, who is head of the Innovation, Startups and Economics Unit. So I guess you're familiar now that you can connect either directly via WebEx or via the platform SWATcard, which we actually recommend, because it hosts both the WebEx and Slido. And Slido, that's the tool that you can use to ask questions on the content of the workshop. But no worries. As you noticed yesterday, we are quite well supported by our communication team, Sébastien Dorval and Ombeline Veltil, who are in the background, but they are supporting us and you. Before I give the floor to my colleague Gabriel Colm, Sébastien, can you please display the poll? We want to understand the composition of our participants today. Yesterday we had 140 participants, of which 44% companies, 40% public authorities, and 16% of others. Gabriela, please.
So hello everybody. So my name is Gabrielle Colm. I also work at DG DEFIS, but I'm part of the unit on international relations and communication. So should you have any technical question, you can ask me directly in the chat, and me or Ombeline or Sébastien, we're the one that are responsible of helping you today with the technical issues. So as Katarina said, we are using Slido for questions. So how does it work? Basically, you are submitting a question and we, the moderators, we are free to accept it or not. So this means you can only see the questions that have been accepted, and then we will then answer the questions afterwards. We also decided to have a type of networking possible between you participants. So this means that not only you will have a networking session at 5 p.m. with the ESA colleagues and the Commission and the companies that wish to take part in, but should you want to have a networking session directly with one of the participants or one of the company, you can decide to contact them on SwapCard. You can see their profile, then you can basically send them an invitation. It works like LinkedIn. You can then connect with them and start chatting. If you want to organize an event, you go to My Event, to the My Events tab on SwapCard, and then you can decide on a meeting time and to have a meeting with a one-to-one meeting with someone else. So this is an option you have throughout the day. So please keep that in mind, should that be of interest for you. We will have different polls during the session. So please, we invite you to reply to those polls because they're very important for the rest of the session. So we will have 3 polls at the beginning, and during the coffee break, which will take place at 3:30, then we will have other polls, and we really invite you to answer them, please. And just a friendly reminder to please switch off your microphone when other people talk and at the end of your intervention to avoid technical problems. And for the same reason, we invite you not to use the video modality. It's an interference. If there is an interference from your microphone, it may be muted by the moderator. The session is recorded. And as I said, I wish you good afternoon. And should you have any question, I remain at your disposal throughout the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. I would like to pass the floor now to Mauro Facchini, head of unit of the Earth Observation Unit. Please, Mauro.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Katarina. Thank you, colleagues, for all the organization. Thank you for the meeting of yesterday that I also followed in a remote way with interest. And today I have the pleasure to open the second day of this event about Copernicus commercial satellite data and European new space. Just like yesterday, as said, we encourage you not to be shy, really to ask questions and to motivate as much as possible the discussion, and the Slido support has been provided in particular for that. I will not repeat everything, but after the workshop, you understood that you have also chances for a networking session. I already would like to wish, indeed, my colleagues, my staff, but ESA for their work and efforts regarding the Copernicus, the CCM activity, so Copernicus Contributing Mission activity. And as Elisabetta already explained you yesterday, the reason for organizing this workshop is to prepare what next. So it's not a revolution that we are planning, but let's say a revised approach on how we plan the Copernicus Contribution Mission activity. And indeed, in this respect, the primary objective is that the CCM remains to ensure the provision of timely, high quality, reliable, and affordable data and services to satisfy the evolving needs of the Copernicus services. So really to be there in order to avoid any kind of disruption of the Copernicus services. At the same time, as explained again yesterday, it is important to promote the competitiveness of our European industry and to stimulate new and innovative initiatives by both big and smaller players entering the market in Europe. So yesterday it was mostly, if I go through the agenda of yesterday, it was mostly about presentation from companies, what's happening really mostly on the European side. This afternoon, we'll take a closer look at the different building blocks of the Copernicus Contributing Mission activity, which are under revision at this moment, and for which, with ESA, we have organized a request for information, an RFI. If I'm not wrong, at least according to the figures I received, 31 companies replied to the RFI, and this is very much appreciated because replying to this request for information takes time. And this is an additional burden on your daily work. I would say, I'm sorry for the big ones, but mostly for the small and medium enterprises where actually they have to produce a particular effort. In the different sessions today, we'll give a first analysis of the answers that were received through the survey. There will be also a session that will be dedicated to a new tool that is called Cassini. It's an initiative from the European Commission, from DG DEFIS, and it's really a tool to support competitive startups for innovation. So really a tool to bring support to companies from ideas to pre-commercial. So it really, in order to give an additional boost to what they're doing. With the revised approach of the CCM activity, we aim to ensure a long-term perspective of accessing data from our European commercial satellite data providers. So it's important for us as Copernicus managers in order to be sure that we have a continued provision, but at the same time, we hope that this CCM activity is also important commercially for this, from the side of the providers. What could be the plans? So in the short term, beyond the traditional data buy, we think that a good way forward could be to put in place, for example, all the tools, and the first is the anchor tenancy approach. This would mean that Copernicus would buy a data provision and would be an influential customer. And and in this way, we will look forward that this data will answer to the Copernicus services data needs, and that the data will be continuously provided with specific requirements of quality, timeliness, and priority. So better details on this anchor tenancy approach will be explained later. Giving this, I would say, anchor tenancy of bulk procurement might give also to the companies some stability and might help them also to convince other customers and investors. Indeed, there could be a link between what can be done with new approaches for data buy and the Cassini initiative. So there might be a combination of different sources of financing in order to try to support the company and again to make them attract other investors. And this fact is not just for Copernicus, it's also responding to one of the requirements of the European Union Space Program. So notably to establish a strong Union space economy. So if beyond ensuring a continuous contribution of data to the program, we will be able also to stimulate and to support this sector, indeed we would respond to one of the objectives of the European Space Program. In the longer term, we want also to be even more dynamic, innovative, and resilient. And it will be very important also to have data that they are reactive and agile in what we do. For this reason, it will be continuously important beyond the Sentinels to have these contributing missions. And indeed, we'll continue to look into very high resolution, both optical and radar, in order to support in particular security emergency needs, as was done in the past, but even further in some way. But as we learned yesterday, there are also other areas, new areas of potential data buy. So if we look into the new expansion mission, we have new measurements in different areas, ranging from CO2 observation to hyperspectral, thermal, and so and so. And we see already that there might be some constellations, some data buy possibilities that could either existing or planned that could contribute to complete the requirements of data in this area. So in a conclusion, the revised CCM activity will continue to use the traditional VHR, optical, and radar data buy, but additionally could foresee really new observation measurements. We can also look very far in time, so we're already looking at the next generation of Copernicus, maybe after 2030, where indeed the Sentinels are planned to remain the backbone of the system, and the contributing missions still to come with data, and we might look into possibility even to put them closer in a way that they can create this kind of concept of hybrid constellation. This is something that is not very major at this moment, but we might have to reflect in the future how to implement it. So this is something that I wanted to bring to you as a reminder from yesterday, but also as a forward looking for today, but also a little bit longer in time. With that, I will stop, but not without wishing you a fruitful workshop. And I'm really looking forward about the conclusions and the way forward to work with you. Thank you very much. And I give you back the floor, Catarina.
Thank you very much, Mauro. Sebastian, could you please show the results of the poll? Hello. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so a quick look. I think we asked yesterday, we also had more or less the same. I think we have like 44%, or how much? It's very small, like 18%. Oh, sorry, it's still going. How many replies did we get? 30, and we have 86 participants. Okay, so I encourage, Gabriela, I think we should encourage people to fill in the poll, to continue filling in the poll, correct?
Yes, please continue filling in the poll so that it gives you a good overview on who is attending this event. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I think we can move to the next session. And the next session is called CCM activity. So we will have a presentation by the European Space Agency, by Peggy Fisher. And I will give a brief presentation, which is kind of a warm-up for the discussion sessions later on. We have foreseen 15 minutes for questions and discussions. The objective of the first presentation is for you to get familiar with the way in which the CCM activity is organized. You will find out the current main components of the CCM activities, the way forward. And the presentation, like already said many times itself, with all the other presentations will be made available as PDFs. They have been uploaded. The ones from yesterday have already been uploaded here in the Swapcard environment, but obviously, and also on the Copernicus website. Please do not hesitate to submit already questions during the presentations so that we can transition smoothly in the key question and answer session. So Peggy, I give you the floor and please introduce yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katharina, for this introduction, and good afternoon to all of you. So my name is Peggy Fischer and I'm working at the European Space Agency, and I am responsible on ESA side for the Copernicus Contributing Mission activity. So it's really a great pleasure for me today to be here and to also share this session together with our counterpart from the European Commission in DG DEFES, so with Katharina Bams. ESA is the entrusted entity for the Copernicus Contributing Mission activity, and as such we are in charge to follow the operations management, the implementation, and also the execution of all the Copernicus Contributing Mission activities. This presentation or this information session today with Katharina together, we have prepared in two parts. So my first session will go into more details of the current setup of the Copernicus Contributing Mission activity. And the second part will dive into the RFI and give some information about the scope, the objectives, and also statistics on responses. So let's start my presentation with the first slide, please. The Copernicus Contributing Mission activity indeed is a framework which allows to include data from commercial institutional commercial missions as well as institutional missions into the Copernicus program, and we are doing this by either contractual agreements or by cooperation agreements. Now clearly the focus for the CCM activity is on the commercial missions, so on the data buy for very high resolution data, optical and so on. And we are buying the data in order to provide complementary input to the Copernicus services in order to fulfill all the needs of the Copernicus services. So commercial data is jointly brought together with the Sentinel data in order to fulfill all the needs of the Copernicus program. The CCM activity, or the data buy in terms of very high resolution data, is responding in particular to the needs of the 4 Copernicus services which you see on the slides: emergency management, the security service, the land monitoring service, as well as the marine environment monitoring service. However, the CCM activity also provides the data, the CCM data, the very high resolution data to research projects of the European Commission as well as to public authorities, European public authorities. Next slide, please. So the next 2 slides will dive a bit into the existing setup of the CCM activity, so our current operations concept or implementation model. As you see on these slides, for the moment, the data supply or the CCM activity is coordinated through 3 main elements. We have, on one hand, various direct contracts with different data providers in order to provide to the Copernicus program a tailored data supply. We have we are running a service via a separate industrial consortium for a contract which is called PRISM, which includes all the data access, infrastructure, and user support functions for the Copernicus Contributing Mission activity. So this includes primarily, of course, the order desk, the help desk, 24/7 support of receiving the requests from the Copernicus services, but it includes various other support functions today, like the archive function, the data access and support tools, but also a function of outreach, a web portal, data quality assurance, and various other functions. And the third element in our current implementation model is the integrator service. We call it integrator service. which helps to orchestrate the other two elements, but also plays a very important role in the interface to the Copernicus services, as such that this service is supporting the agency very much in interfacing each Copernicus services and capturing the user needs and making sure that the user demand is well understood and well translated in our operational activities. On the left side, you see the dashboard that we regularly update. I will not go into the details, but you see also the volume of rush requests, for example, that we had in the last 12 months, and various other interesting information that you can look at it also offline. This presentation will be shared with you later on. Next slide, please. This is yet another slide on the current CCM implementation model. Again, you see here that we are having these two main elements for the moment. One are the single data provider contracts with ESA. There are several of those. And we have the central infrastructure, which is called today PRISM, it's a separate service. So this view graph, I will not go into the details. Again, something to study if you like when you have the presentation. But it shows in more detail the current interactions between the CCMEs and the central infrastructure, as well as the different data flows implemented today towards the Copernicus services. Next slide, please. So this is a nice view graph which gives a quite holistic view on the entire Copernicus program, where you see not only the Sentinel missions, but in particular the Copernicus Contributing Missions that are today complementing the Copernicus program with various data sets. So you see here that we are showing the Copernicus Contributing Missions via sensor type, optical and radar. And we also show the future, so upcoming CCM missions that we are currently onboarding and which will become available in the very near future, such as Cosmos Climate Second Generation, Vision 1, and also Pleiad Neo. Next slide. This was covered yesterday briefly already by Katharina, but we decided to bring it up again today in order to show you again the various spatial resolution categories that today are part of the Copernicus program. So clearly for the Copernicus Contributing Mission activity, the focus is on the very high resolution data, for which there are two classes, which many of you know very well. We have VHR1 and VHR2 classes here. So VHR1 is including all the data sources, the data providers, which are providing CCM data of less than 1 meter spatial resolution, while VHR2 covers data in between 1 meter and 4 meter spatial resolution. So clearly the trend that we are seeing in particular for on-demand optical data is to go to be in the VHR1 class, and there are many requests for data which are requiring data, Copernicus services requiring data of spatial resolution less than 50 centimeter of spatial resolution. So the trend is clearly in that direction. Whilst for systematic data sets like the pan-European coverage, which is currently generated every 3 years, we are using, again, optical very high resolution data of less than 2 meter spatial resolution, 70% of it, whilst also VHR2 data is contributing with 30%, so data of less than 4 meter spatial resolution. Next slide. Yesterday we had an interesting question from the audience about the Copernicus budget spent by optical and by SAR data. So this view graph, which was, by the way, also part of the RFI document or the available in the system on the IDS system, is hopefully giving a good answer to that question. So as you can see, the majority of the data buy today is with optical data, very high resolution optical data, with a smaller portion also of data beyond 4 meters spatial resolution. So this is the green part of the pie chart, which, however, does not include only the on-demand data buy. It also includes the systematic data buy, so the pan-European coverages that are being procured every 3 years. You see also that there is a smaller but good portion of SAR data, which is this pie chart is, by the way, showing the last MFF. So as you see, the industrial costs from 2014 up to 2021, and you see that the SAR data is smaller, but is however is a good portion of that. This part is including the on-demand data buy, as well as data buy linked to the Copernicus STEM, and also very important for SAR, the delivery of systematic SAR data in support to the Copernicus marine monitoring service, to monitor various AOIs, particularly for sea size monitoring. Also there we have a good portion of SAR data being procured for that. The rest of the industrial costs, as you see, are linked to our current implementation concept and the model that we have. So going to the other 2 elements that I've shown you before, which is the central infrastructure, the PRISM consortia service contract, and the integrator service that is also supporting very much the CCM activity. Next slide, please. This slide is also something we have seen yesterday, but it's good to have maybe a repetition also on the main groups of user needs and data sets that we have in the CCM activity. So we are distinguishing high level between on-demand and systematic user needs. So as you see in this view graph, on-demand is linked to requests coming from, in particular, the Copernicus emergency management service and the security service, in case in rush mode, in particular in rush mode, in case of crisis situations or natural and man-made disasters events. And yes, we are running our CCM setup in order to satisfy the on-demand requirements in the most efficient and timely possible way. And then we have the systematic data needs, as I mentioned before, in particular one European coverage, which is generated for the European Environment Agency every 3 years on behalf of the European Commission by ESA. And so you see, the VHR coverage here, but it's also including the Copernicus STEM and also systematic data sets which are generated in particular for the marine monitoring service and the atmosphere monitoring service, as I mentioned before. Next slide, please. This is a recap on the current user categories and access rights in the Copernicus Contributing Mission activity. So this table is showing the information both for the systematic and the on-demand data sets. I will not go into all the details. You can also review this and go also to the web portal and see all the details. Important here is to highlight once again that the Copernicus services are the only ones that have the right to actually task satellites and ask for new acquisitions, whilst there are various eligible user groups that are able to download the CCM data, which is acquired and then being placed in the central catalog in our repository. And there are also user categories which are only allowed to view the data. You see that here very well displayed in this view graph. So the public authorities in particular have the rights to not only view the data, but also download. Next slide, please. this is just one slide to show you, to give you a bit more insight into the existing outreach function for the Copernicus contributing mission activity. So we have this web portal, you see the link on the slide, and we have also 2 data access points. One is the Panda catalog, which allows to browse the data and download the CCM data sets. And there's also the possibility to have direct FTP access to the CCM data. Next slide, please. So this is actually concluding the first part of the presentation, which was aiming to give you an introduction to the CCM activity. Now we are starting the second part, which is linked to the request for information. And before I start to go into the slides, I would like to express also on behalf of the ESA team, the DigiDefis team already mentioned it before, our appreciation for your inputs. Indeed, it is a lot of effort to respond to this RFI, and we really appreciate that you have taken this effort. We are going to make good use of this input. So thank you very much for this. And yes, we are really glad to have engaged together with DigiDefis into this consultation phase with you. And it will be very interesting, and it's very interesting to analyze, but there are many aspects in this RFI which we will use, of course, for the evolution of the CCM operations concept. Next slide, please. So the Copernicus contributing mission activity is under revision, as we heard before, and this is done for various very good reasons. They are high level, again, mentioned on the slide. I will not go into all the details because Katharina in the next presentation will have more elements on this. But indeed, it is an important activity, this revision phase, and it is done as part of a joint working group between DigiDefis and ESA. And yes, we are very glad that we have gone into the step of consulting the space industry in Europe with the CCM activity evolution ideas. Next slide, please. So this is a slide which is showing some statistics on RFI responses. As Mauro mentioned before, we have in total received 31 replies from different companies, and this is a very good feedback, excellent actually. We have looked into the different categories of companies, as you see here on the slide, and tried to match the replies to the various categories. So as you can see, we have here classified it into new space companies, which have an existing space asset, so an operating satellites or satellite constellation in place. And now we have had 3 replies. We have had new space companies which are developing space assets. And here we have the largest portion of replies, as you can see. So we have here 16 RFI responses, which is excellent and very good. We have also had good replies from established companies. Here we are referring to data providers that have space assets and that are contributing today to the CCM activity, as well as data redistributors or data resellers, also today part of the CCM activity, contributing very good to the CCM activity. There also we have had replies from 2 companies. And we have also received interesting responses from, as we call them, data service operators, which are companies that are providing ground segment services or services linked to ground segment elements. And we will show more information also in the next or in the third presentation today. So all of this is giving us a wealth of information and a very good picture in order to take the next step and define the actual direction of the CCM evolution. Next slide, which should be my last one. Just to thank you very much for your attention. Indeed, thank you for your attention here. And this slide is recalling also our contact points from the Copernicus Contributing Mission team for any requests for CCM data. You also see again our web portal, which provides all different information for the CCM activity. Of course, if you like to discuss with me or with ESA colleagues or Katharina on any of these aspects, feel free to reach out to me also in the Slido session. We are open for questions. So Katharina, I would give the floor to you, back to you for the second presentation now.
Thank you very much, Peggy, for this excellent presentation. So I will quickly, maximum 10 minutes, so please help me with the timing, quickly walk through the RFI. You will see that I will not win the prize, beauty prize for the slides. Can you show the next slides, right? Next slide, thank you. Because for the, but it was not, the purpose was not to have beautiful slides, but they are functional because they will be made available after the presentation. What we want to do here is, what I want to do is to guide you, to walk you through the different questions that we'll ask in the RFI, so that you are that you're fully aware of what has been asked to the companies, and like Peggy said, the effort that they have made to answer to this RFI. I'm just trying to I don't see the slide very well. 1 second, please. Yeah, I don't see it very well. Okay, so very quickly, this slide here, what you can see is what Mauro already also confirmed. So we are revising together with these are the CCM activity, reshaping in a way that the European VHR data providers are given a long-term perspective of data buy for public needs. It's to reinforce competitiveness, to confirm EU strategic autonomy, and also to test other types of commercial satellite data, obviously that serve Copernicus services needs. Next slide, please. Remember the slide that Peggy pulled up, where you had a bit of a complex figure. Just to remind you, so the CCM activity, there are two building blocks. It's the CCM data by itself, in which currently the current situation is 11 contracts, 1-to-1, ESA with the data provider. The second building block is the central infrastructure and support functions. Next slide, please. This is quickly an overview of how we're trying, or how we think we can tackle the different objectives. The first one, so revision, is to answer to the objectives called for in the Union Space Regulation for a strong Union Space economy. This is through anchor tenancy. The second one is to modernize the activity, the CCM activity implementation model and contractual structure to facilitate the onboarding of European new space companies. So here you see between, in italic, anchor tenancy, of course, and data by optical SAR, but also other data. Third one, improve the reuse of the CCM data by public authorities. I'm very happy that we had these two public authorities yesterday giving their presentation, because they showed how they can reuse the VHR coverage, for example. The numbers, the statistics show, however, that the reuse by public authorities is still very low. But okay, so here is an opportunity for us to boost the reuse, because from the presentations yesterday, you saw that they are in on demand, or they would like to see yearly seasonal VHR coverages. And it would facilitate them because then they would have a more focused data buy for their purpose. It's also about the licensing mechanism currently in place. Is this the right way to go where we are now with these user categories for systematic and on demand? And then as said, the fourth one is the modernization, simplifying of the central infrastructure and support functions. Here we have pricing and licensing mechanism. Let me give you an example. We have the Copernicus Emergency Service, who, as you know, have a very difficult task. They have to deal with non-predefined areas that are of interest, like we call them. They do not know where a crisis will occur. And obviously, we have to make sure that they do not go over the budget. We work with quotas, and they have to start finding out how many images, how does it work? We should not go over the quota. And so here is a bit of a call to you. Companies also come with solutions like data as a service subscription plans. But we will discuss this in the sessions. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll walk you through quickly. These are the questions that were asked in the request for information. There was a chapter on classification of the respondent to understand what type or how does a company identify itself. Is it a data provider, operator, or data service operator? We tested out the different criteria for definition of European space or European new space company. There was a question on satellite imaging capabilities, end-to-end performance infrastructure development, data and information value-added services, and data access. Next slide, please. So there was a question, or the chapter is on the CCM evolution considerations, CCM data supply, contractual approach. That's our session 2 that we will deal with. So we asked, what is the best approach? Would you as a company prefer to participate as a single provider, as it is today, the situation? Would you prefer to be in a structure of consortium? We do have, or ESA does have, one contract with a consortium for the VHR coverage. Or do you think it's better to have a combination of a set of single provider contracts? And how do you think that this selected approach can serve or improve the European data provision for the Copernicus program? We also asked the question, how do they see, or how the companies see, the onboarding scheme to facilitate access of new European actors? And then we asked, and this is very specifically for the SMEs and startups, if you would participate as a single provider, what would be the essential contractual aspects for your company to attract external investment funds? Okay, as a single provider. But what would it be if you would be part of a consortium as a subcontractor? Next slide. And then in this part, we tested the possibility of setting up a new approach. And that is, we call it, or it was called European Data Supply Service Contracts. Because remember, currently, there are multiple contracts with single providers, and there's one single contract for systematic data buy campaign. A data supply service contract would work as follows. A European coordinator. ESA would have a contract with that European coordinator, with the data supply service coordinator. And that contractor would then manage several contracts, subcontracts with different data providers. So that was the question, and we wanted to know the appreciation by the companies. They were asked, can you please identify benefits, drawbacks? What do you think should be the role, responsibilities of the prime, of the subcontractors and ESA? And once again, for the SMEs and startups, the question was, if the prime is an established company, how would you then have a chance to grow and become a competitive player? How do you think the share on data buy business should be ensured? Next question. Sorry, next slide, sorry. We're nearly there. So data licenses. It will come back in the session. We will go into detail there. We asked if you would keep the traditional license scheme or if they would propose another scheme. There were very interesting answers. Would there be a differentiation for the reuse for public authorities? And we explicitly asked if there was a preference for time-based licenses or payment as a function of use. There was a question on data request handling concept also. Next slide. Yeah, this is the final slide. And this was specific a chapter for European new space companies. It is to understand the capacity that they have or that they plan to have to meet the Copernicus requirements with the required data quality and quantity. Because obviously we want to keep or maintain the high quality of our Copernicus program. The schedule and current phase of the development of the space infrastructure, the beginning of the operational phase where data will be available, and other customers and data policy. That's in the context of the anchor tenancy, of course. So that, I think that's my last slide. Can you see? It's the next slide. Yes, that's the next slide. So I quickly walked you through, and I think you must be exhausted already. So once again, thank you very much for all the companies to answer to this RFI. So Peggy, let's have a look if there are questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, there's one question already. Sebastian, can you pull it up? Can you show it? It's
Yes, 2 seconds, please.
Yeah, it's, sorry?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm on it.
Yeah, it's about the definition, the request for definition of a new space company, Peggy. Yeah.
Yes, which indeed, just to say, it will be addressed in the next presentation. So this will be a part of the presentation that we have prepared on the different
It's an interesting question. So let's have a look. Here you can read it. What is your definition of new space company? Is it related to the way to develop the assets or to the company itself? Now, we could identify some established companies that acquire satellites following new procedures. Do we consider them as new space entities? Yes. Thank you very much. So indeed, in the RFI, we tested the different criteria. And I think you will deal with it in the first or in the second session.
in the first session, which is coming right after.
So this was an anonymous question. So if it's okay for Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous, we take the question to the next session. If you think it's still not answered, please flag it to us. So the next question is from Philip Harwood from Eventflow. Is the overall budget for data buy fixed? Would the inclusion of new data types be at the expense of traditional data types?
Katharina, maybe this is more a question for you in terms of outlook to maybe the budget for the new MFF. I'm not sure if we have mentioned that yesterday or if we can say something in that respect.
Yeah, yesterday there was the same question, and I actually double checked with my colleagues, and I understood there's going to be decision points by in I think end of November. So at this point, a decision point, which means also the approval by the member states. I thought ESA member states also. So we cannot reveal it yet. What we can say is that the budget foreseen includes also support to new space companies. I think that can be revealed, but you can already have an idea of the magnitude if you see how important this contributing mission activity is for the Copernicus program, for our Copernicus services, and the initiative that we're setting up. Would the inclusion of new data types be at the expenses of traditional data set types? No. So remember, I don't know if you participated yesterday, where our deputy head of unit, my deputy head of unit, Elisabeth Hambouche, said that we the structure that we foresee is to keep the traditional data buy, and on top of that, to foresee the data buy from new space companies. How this can be implemented, this is of course is to be analyzed together with ESA, because that means the procurement needs to be shaped in a way that these new data type can come on board, and the onboarding of new space companies. And to give you an idea of the complexity, we're talking about the playing field that we have now and that we understand what is out there. Jorge is also here, I see, and Jean-Christophe. So this is what we think can come on board, but maybe within 2-3 years, other activities are going to be developed, and how to make sure they can get on board also. So that's complex. I don't know if Jean-Christophe, would you like to come in, or?
No, I think you gave the perfect answer, Katarina. So indeed, we intend to increase this budget compared to the previous MFF, but we have a figure in mind. But of course, this all needs to be set. It remains to be fixed and decided. What we can say, as mentioned by Katarina, is that it will not be at the expense of the other data, but as mentioned also in the introduction by Mauro, rather to expand the scope and the type of data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Henri, I see you're also online. There are other questions. Oh, Peggy, sorry. There are other questions. People can vote on the questions, but let's see. We have a question from the French Space Agency. Can you explain the difference between data buy and anchor tenancy? Is it in terms of likely budget deployed, or longer term investment? So, sorry, the question is a bit difficult in terms of data buy. The anchor tenancy is a way that we would foresee to do the data buy. So it's not so much that there is a difference, but it's a way to implement or to see how we can do that data buy. Anchor tenancy, as you know, and we will see in the session of Cassini by colleague Thomas, anchor tenancy is a way to have us, the Commission, through the data done by ESA, as an influential customer. What does it mean? We're not going to be the only user or customer, obviously, but also others. We want these new companies to have other customers and attract investors in that way. I don't know, Henri, would you like to comment, or Peggy, on this one?
If your answer was
no, it's okay. I would say we have other questions.
Mm-hmm. There is a session, of course, also dedicated to anchor tenancy. If it's not clear, let's take it back then. Okay. Then the next question is, will you consider service buy, vertical developments, or only data buy in the future?
This is one of the questions of the next poll, but we are open precisely also to consider the two. It's not only data buy.
Correct, yes. Okay, so the next one is the overall budget for data. But, oh, sorry, this one we had. Excuse me, I'm trying to hear. Will you consider? Okay, this. Here we are. Which is the best site to check the latest and updated list and description of CCMs with agreement in place already? Apparently, that list, the following one is not complete. Maybe Peggy, can you?
Yes, I'm not sure if this list is complete, but the few parts that I had in the presentation should give a very good overview of the,
yes, we
of
will
the CCMs today in the portfolio. So this gives a nice graphical display of the situation.
Okay, maybe Katarina could take the next one.
Yes.
Which is a precise value.
Read it out, please, maybe. Yeah.
Yes, the 332 million from the last MFF was for the period 2014 2021. So is that approximately 31 million per year? No, because because it was not evenly distributed among the 7 years. You have to remember the Copernicus service at that time we are just starting. And actually we have even if I remember well, Catherine, the emergency management service and the security service is started around 2017-18. So definitely at the start, we had much less than average value. And towards the end of the period, we have much more than average value. So, and I would say, if I remember well, we will be more around currently around 50, 60 million per year. If I think from my head, I would have to check that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I may add, if you divide 332 by 7, in fact, we are closer to 50 million indeed per year already today.
Yeah. So it's more than the 50 million currently.
Exactly.
It was not evenly distributed and it's more. I could give a check to have a value, but I mean, with that respect, the effort which is done by the Commission on Copernicus Contributing Mission is not negligible. It's really very important. I mean, I would estimate that it represents more or less 20% of what we spend for the Copernicus space component operation, so including the Sentinel operation by ESA and EUMETSAT. So what is spent on all the operation aspects, Sentinel and CCM, the contributing mission, represent more than 20% in the next MFF if we keep the number that we are currently envisaging. So it's really, it also represents what is the place which is given to the contributing mission alongside the Sentinel mission, as was said already yesterday by Elizabeth and today by Mauro. It's quite an important budget,
Yes.
which we want to add new space on top of that.
Correct. And there's also the Copernicus demo in that budget.
Yes.
Don't forget that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I have 4 more questions. Wait, so and we have like 4 more minutes, so please let's quickly proceed. What happens if a new space company cannot deliver? When will the budget be freed up? So actually, this is a very good question because this is our concern. Absolutely. If the anchor tenancy or the idea, or at this point in time, we're still working with ideas, if I can say it like this, is to indeed offer a contract, but you will only be paid upon the delivery of the data. But the mere fact of having a contract could be very helpful. It's like a letter of intention, if you can compare it, to attract or to show other investors the credibility. Obviously, this is not going to be given to you like this. It's going to be a very, how you say this, tough, can I say tough, or important screening first also, because yeah, to start making part of Copernicus program, you need to show that you can level up or live up to the high quality that we're currently delivering. Yes. Okay, for that. Next question is from Joseph Haywood, Aztec Space. As a new space startup wanting to align themselves as much as possible with the CCM, how would you advise us to proceed following this event? How can we make ourselves known to the program, access resources, understand how to best align our product or service? So maybe ESA colleagues?
Yeah, I would say that obviously ESA will be in contact with you at some stage. We will see how we proceed with the one that we have seen in RFI. How we proceed before the formal procurement. But ideally, we like to visit you, so to really have a more serious discussion. I hope it's a physical visit and not an online visit, but that will be our plan.
Okay. Then new space companies may change. That's an interesting question. We talked about this, remember? New space.
Yes, it's an interesting question, but we don't have the reply.
If a company is acquired by an US company before they start delivering, will the contract be honored? Okay, that's part of the risk assessment that we need Yeah.
We clearly, it's also for us in the way we tackle the new space company in the Copernicus Contributing Mission, there are two criteria. There will be obviously credibility criteria. I mean, is really the company able to deliver at some stage? So we call that credibility criteria. And then we have eligibility criteria that we define obviously with the colleague of the Commission, which is more, are you a European, are you an SME? And indeed, that's a little bit an headache, that question that we will have obviously to resolve before starting the procurement. It's a good question. Definitely, we are fully aware this is a question we have to solve.
Yes, thank you.
We know as well that could occur as well.
Yes. So the colleagues from communication are telling me it's time, but let's deal with the last question. Joseph Heiwit from ASTEC Space asks clarification on the part of other data. So Joseph, yesterday we discussed or we presented what this means. The other data are the data that are being asked by our Copernicus services. It includes, for example, thermal infrared, radio frequency, hyperspectral. Jean-Christophe, can you complement maybe?
No, you're correct. Yes, it's also in the optical domain indeed, as you've mentioned. But we also have atmospheric missions, for example, which are coming up. Why not complement them? We have the CO2 mission. Why not complement them with further sets of data?
Yes.
So we are monitoring plenty of parameters with our Sentinels. So I think you can look at all the types of data we get via the Sentinels, and the idea would be to enhance the revisit and the agility.
It is however important, Jean-Christophe, to remind it's whatever is commercial. It is whatever is commercial. The market also decides which data could be there, and the Copernicus service then to check whether the data is useful or not. But we are extremely open on that, as long as we are talking about commercial data.
Yes.
And then we are also open to your ideas, of course, because we may have missed something. You may have excellent ideas, and then we might consider them. It does not mean that we will enter into that business as a sure thing, but this is something which can be considered if we think there is a need for this type of data.
Okay, so there's one more question, but I'm looking at the timing. It's by anonymous. If it's okay, I will try to reply offline. If it's not, privately, and if you're not happy with the request or the answer, sorry, please come back then. But we really should move forward if that's okay. So let's go to the next session. Quickly here. So let's go and discuss. So this part is called Evolution of the CCM Activity. It is based on the input that we received on the request for information, which dealt with the questions as shown on the evolution of the Copernicus Contributing Missions. You can show the next slide. So we will have 4 sessions, 4 topics. The first session is about anchor tenancy with a focus on new space. The second one is contractual approach and central infrastructure, rapid tasking, rapid access to data, which is crucial for our emergency and security services. Third one, data licenses, and fourth is Cassini InvestEU. Let's kick off with the first one on anchor tenancy. You can show me the next slide. And Henri, I give you the floor, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Katharina. So my name is Henri Laure. At ESA, I am in charge of the management of the Earth observation mission, meaning basically when the missions are in operation. So the ESA missions like the Earth Explorer, the Sentinel missions, but also what we call third-party mission, and particularly the commercial mission that we use in the context of Copernicus, but also another program, EarthNet, where we also use commercial mission, but for only for scientists. In RFI, you have seen in an early presentation, we had 19 new space companies which reply. 3 are already providing data, and 16 are in development phase. We have seen at different stages. We have looked again, we really sincerely thank all the companies for having replied to the REFI, because we have asked many questions and some were not always easy to reply. We have analyzed, it's a preliminary analysis, particularly what came from the new space companies. I've done that with my colleague Antonio Cicolella. We have also involved another colleague following the ESA InCube program, Joseph Bolgi. The InCube program is very relevant, the ESA InCube program, because it's a program of co-funding that we have at ESA since several years, public-private partnership. And obviously some companies who reply to our RFI are already benefiting of the ESA InCube program. So we look very carefully, and we have really very high level, I would say, considerations. Maybe the first one is to see on the pie, which is very important. We look at which Earth association domain were addressed by the new space company, which replied to the RFI. And you see how hyperspectral is dominant. We had 7 companies who develop hyperspectral assets. 4 companies with optical very high resolution. Very high resolution is better than 4 meters or better than 1 meter, depending on we have VHR2 or VH1. Thermal infrared, 3 companies, 2 companies with SAR, 2 companies with atmospheric composition, but quite different. And then we are more surprising. We have some surprise, like altimetry, 1 company, and 1 with an optical high resolution, but on a geostationary orbit. So what we can see here is a diversity of the reply. It's not only very high resolution, it's really a diversity, and it's the diversity of commercial and behavior. I mean, we have all checked all those companies intend to have a commercial approach with their data cell, certainly with important customer, and ESA/Copernicus was seen as an important customer, but also looking after other customer. An important aspect of the analysis is that several companies are aggregators of systems procured on the market. It's not, companies are not developing everything, they are aggregators of systems procured on the market. We have explained that to the colleagues of the Commission. Another very important consideration, which I think came already yesterday, most companies consider the satellite platform as a commodity. Satellite platform may come from Europe, but also may come from outside Europe. Next slide. Other consideration, obviously, when we talk about anchor tenancy, there is an idea of long-term contracts, which shall also serve long-term user needs. And we at the Commission and ESA, we are confronted with let's say the budget duration, the 7 years budget duration of the multi-financial framework of the European Union budget. This said, we have noticed that most new space companies look at short-term horizon, 2-3 years. They are not sure where they will be in 3 years, and we understand why. But still have obviously long-term plans. Those anchor tenancy long-term contract clearly worse, and we insist on that, are with commercial companies. And indeed, as I've said, most companies are startup companies with commercial ambition, so to sell the data. Therefore, their business plan shall be credible, and that's what will be verified as well when we embark in the procurement approach in 22. But we have noticed there was a general consent that having a contract as Copernicus Contributing Mission with ESA and the Commission is fundamental for the company business case, which we fully understand. This is also why we think we could be influential in some aspect up to, for example, influence the design of the mission. But it's also very important for us that the company don't see Copernicus as a unique customer. We really push all the companies to look after the customer, in particular outside Europe, and we hope that our approach to have a very early contract will solidify I would say the status of the company and will also allow them to look after other customers, in particular outside Europe. Now, before we had the question about, yes, but what is the definition of a new space company? And here we have, at first, there is no definition of new space. We know that very well, but we are very careful with the vocabulary. In particular, we use two different words. New space company for us is a rather young company, which is based on private funds, at least at the start, and which has a commercial customer, or which will have commercial customer. This is what we call a new space company. Now we know very well there are new space methods. Basically, method meaning constellation of small satellite using commercial off-the-shelf items, and we think that even established company could follow new space methods, but they are not a new space company. So we hope that we clarify that aspect. So that's we are very simple in our analysis so far on those aspects. Only 2 slides. I think we have questions to ask. I don't know if the colleagues at the Commission can launch the poll.
Yes, okay, that's our colleague Sébastien. Can you please launch the poll? In the meantime, we received a question. Henri, can you take a question? Or do you want first to have the poll? It's a small question. You're muted, sorry.
We can't hear you, Henri. You're muted.
Can't hear you.
The poll, sorry, we can launch the poll, which is the next slide. And then we reply to the question in the meantime. No, it's not there. So there is the poll, which is more on the how the company sees the relation. Is only on data buy? Is it only on data service? There is also the question on the co-design, which means, as I said, a way for ESA and the Commission to influence the design to better fulfill the needs of the Copernicus services. Yes, indeed. You see, do you prefer to have a contract for data buy only, for data service only, or for data buy and data services? With data service, we mean some value-adding service on your data, for example, to as a bundle. And then the co-design, which is a way also for us to be more influential in the design when it is still time to influence the design. So maybe for the questions. For the question.
Yeah, there was one question, a small question. How many of the 19 new space companies corresponding to the RFI meet the credibility and eligibility criteria mentioned earlier?
No, the criteria will apply to all new space companies. As I said, the credibility and the eligibility. Obviously, for the one providing already data, they don't need to be credible because they already provide the data. Okay, but otherwise, once we have solidified those credibility criteria, because that's in the making, we have good ideas, but it's in the making. We will, yeah, that would be part of our procurement approach that we will launch in 2022 with the new space companies.
Yes.
I'll say today, how many? Ideally, it cannot be that all. If we say all new space companies are credible, maybe ESA is no more credible. If instead we are credibility criteria too tough, too difficult, we are at risk that none of the new space company can be in. So we need to find the right cursor to have still a substantial amount of companies into that approach. So credibility criteria and eligibility criteria.
Okay, so 19 participants so far. There's another question. Sorry, that question was from Jörn Hoffman from DLR. So now the question from Giovanni Silos Labini. It's about the distinction between new space companies and new space method. You can have privately owned companies that follow new space methods having a commercial base. It's more like a comment, not so much a question, I think. It's clarifying that what, as I understand it, you have new space companies and new space method, but you can have privately owned companies that follow new space methods, which is both then.
Absolutely. I mean, even the very large European company established could follow new space method. We know that very well. But when we say new space company, we mean really those small recent companies as are defined. I mean, if an established player use a new space method, it's still not a new space company for us. That's what we mean. Obviously, the established player are already providing data to Copernicus, and very likely will continue to provide data to Copernicus.
Okay, so please answer to the poll, because until now only 20, and I think we have more companies in the room. So here is a Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous about the definition again. Established companies are usually supported by private funds. What could be the difference between established and new space?
No, definitely established companies. I mean, the large one we are in Europe are really based on private funds. That's not the point. The established company are the large company. We know the name. We have a big one, Airbus. We have Thales. We have and Igeos. That's the large companies and fully respectable. And we need absolutely their data to run the contributing mission. But they are, even if in the future they could indeed apply new space method, they are not new space company as such, in the sense that we, together with the Commission, we want to make sure that we support the emergence of additional companies, new space companies, and that's also the purpose of the revised approach. We want really to have to enable that support through the data buy approach, the anticipated data buy approach that we call anchor customer.
Okay, so Henri, let's have a look at the outcome of the poll. It's 22 participants, but it's quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a surprise, Catherine. We know that several of the data providers establish new space. Very often, they also have some value-adding services. I mean, they provide the data, but they can also provide information like information on floods, information on fire extension, and stuff like that. So it's something that we need also to review together with the Commission and together with the relevant Copernicus service, how that can be accommodated, especially where we have a need to go fast. This is the idea. We'll come back to that point. Rapid response. Rapid response means not only providing data, but providing the information very fast. And that's where we want to, with the Commission, review a little bit the approach there, and with the relevant Copernicus service, essentially the emergency security service, how we can ensure some information arriving even faster. So value-added information, not only data.
Yes, okay. I think we're about to close this part, this first session. There's a very a cool question. Are we still able to submit or join the RFI? So there's still
good point, Katerina. Yes, I mean we have already we have the template. Basically, I think the website is closed, but we have a template. Either by contacting either the Commission or either, we are pleased really to see new ones. I would say reasonably until the Christmas time, because after that we will enter in a procurement approach. But until that time, so until Christmas time, we are happy to. We make sure actually to put the template together with the workshop, in the workshop, Katerina, in the workshop outcome together with the presentation. The RFI template in case that some companies still wants to reply, if you agree, Katerina.
Yes, it's fine, but they have to submit quite fast because
Yes, yes, indeed, as I said.
all the companies, I mean, they were pushed to the limit to submit, so
Yeah.
it's possible, but
we
yeah.
know also that, but there is something, Katerina, that you say rightly also, that in our logic, in our approach, we need also to accommodate in the future, in a near-term future, say in 3 years from now, 2-3 years from now. Again, we know that new space actor could appear, and we need also to see how we can be in contact with them and also take them on board at some stage. So that's another element that we take into account in our reflection.
Yes, okay. All right, so I suggest we close this session now, if it's okay. And we move to the next session. 1 second. Thank you very much. We go to the next session by Peggy, session 2. Peggy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Katharina. Thank you very much. So indeed, we are now in this session 2 on the contractual approach. And yes, we have summarized, say, our analysis of the RFI responses now in a few slides. I have to say again that we have received a wealth of information, and it is not an easy exercise to bring all of this in a few bullet points on a few slides. Also, again, thank you for your patience in responding to all the questions on the contractual approach, which was very good, and it's really important for us. As you see, the contractual approach is, in my opinion, one of the most important aspects to tackle in order to bring the CCM activity to the next level. And therefore, again, thank you for all these inputs. And let me reassure you that the ESA team and jointly with the Commission will make good use of it, and we will take your feedback into account in this definition phase. So the first slide is aiming to summarize, as we would call the main needs when it comes to a contractual approach, as you have expressed in this RFI. So we have asked the question about the most relevant features of a future approach. And in there, indeed, the majority of the responses in the RFI gave us a clear picture. So you have all a very high interest in long-term contract and a commitment for data buy. So going into an anchor tenancy approach for a longer term. You would like to see more predictability of revenues, such as like a minimum guarantee. You're also, of course, emphasizing on the equal competitiveness and opportunities for new space and established players, so that fair participation in the Copernicus contributing mission activity is ensured. There has to be room for space for growth for new companies, and the agreements that will be placed in the new contracts have to be sharply based on clear KPIs and clear service level agreements. This is also a point that came up in many of the responses. You also gave us the message that indeed a more direct feedback loop with the Copernicus end users would be very much appreciated. You emphasize on the need to establish or to define a suitable onboarding scheme. And actually, we have also received various good inputs there on ideas on such an onboarding scheme, the definition of that. In particular, the new space entities, when asked that question, you, in addition, gave us some additional inputs, which are related to, whatever contractual structure we should place, it should be able to allow to adopt quickly to the new capabilities that new space companies can bring in, and SMEs. And you're also emphasizing the need or the point to put in place a more agile contracting mechanism, which is more adapted to new space and SME characteristics, ideally with an approach which is simpler than today. And we should also take into account, in fact, the adoption of new business models that are coming now with new space companies. So going, including in addition to the traditional data buy, which today is per square kilometer, as you know, link it also to new business models like data as a service, subscription plans, or data flat rate concepts, which would indeed allow data economies of scale and would reduce the unit pricing. And yes, you have also the new space companies in particular emphasize on the onboarding schemes and also the need or the idea to place demonstration or qualification activities with new space companies in the beginning in order to demonstrate their capabilities. Next slide, please. Then we had in the RFI, as Katharina mentioned before, also various questions on implementation concepts. So yeah, of course, contractual approach is always the subject, but more going into concrete terms of implementation. So as we have shown before, there are two concrete or two categories of user needs, which are systematic user needs and on-demand user needs. And so I have two slides to elaborate a bit on this implementation feedback. This slide is linked to fulfilling the systematic data needs here for optical very high resolution data, which is today is a service contract that we have in place to generate a pan-European coverage of very high resolution data every 3 years. And there clearly in the responses we can see that the current concept is found reasonable, also because it is proven, it is a proven solution, it's proven to work well, where various data providers come together and generate this coverage of entire Europe or participating states. So this has been found as a solution both for by established players, but also by some new space companies. It is quite clear that the generation of such large coverage is a complex activity. We have seen that now in several projects, and there is a need to have someone orchestrating it all. So from the data tasking up to data production and the data delivery. It's important that there is someone taking the lead to bring all the data inputs together and generate this final coverage fit for purpose and in alignment to the needs of the Copernicus land monitoring service. You have also brought forward various improvement suggestions, however, which is very good to see. So we should take into account a better balancing of technical, very demanding service specifications and the available budget for generating such large coverages. Also here you emphasize it would be a good idea to allow first interaction with the end users in order to fine-tune the coverages and make sure that the deliverables are fully fit for purpose. And there are also ideas on the definition of onboarding schemes for new data providers to enter, to have the possibility to participate in the compilation of these large coverages. If we go to the next slide, sorry for all this text, and I can read this well. So this is focusing on the feedback on the implementation concept for the on-demand data needs. So here, as we've shown before, on-demand data needs are referring to responding in fast with fast timeliness to emergency activations near time. And we have had different responses on this subject. Indeed, also depending very much if it's coming from very high resolution data providers, the feedback, or so from established players or from new space companies. but also if the feedback was received from data service operators. So entities, companies that are today providing services, ground segment services. So we have seen that the majority of the data providers have concerns that the prime subcontractor setup would be a favorable solution for the CCM, evolution of the CCM activity, and do indicate in these responses their preference to stay with this current setup, which, as we explained before, is today we have single provider contracts directly with ESA as contracting authority, and we have in addition a centralized service for all the support functions, in particular the centralized request handling. But saying this, we have obtained, received indeed very constructive considerations also from data providers, both established and new-based companies, on the approach of implementing on-demand supply service. And yes, we have summarized some of this feedback here on the slide, which is very good, and we will take it into account. So important for many these responses is indeed that the prime shall be unbiased, meaning it ideally should not be a data provider, in order to ensure that there is zero conflict of, zero potential for conflict of interest. We also gather from these responses that indeed it would be extremely important to enable a partnership in such a consortia, a trust building between the different companies that would collaborate to provide such a service together. And it would need to be ideally led by a prime, which is very much knowledgeable also in data provision mechanisms and end-to-end delivery activities. Important is that in such a context, in any case, competitiveness and implementation of new space company solutions must be ensured. So it be possible for these solutions to be made available and also to grow. Again, we have seen that in these considerations that objectives would need to be very clearly specified in order to make sure that everybody knows to which objectives to deliver to, and the service level agreements would need to be set up very carefully, also respecting the company's characteristics, which are different. And we would need to ensure a way to find a mechanism to integrate new actors more quickly, and a prime could potentially take the burden of such a harmonization and integration, and it could speed up the process. What is very clear in all of this, what we have also seen from the replies, is that ESA overall is very much needed would be very much needed if such a service would be set up, in order to provide a strong governance and a very strong supervision function. Indeed, in order to guarantee that there is a fair distribution of data approaches to the various providers. We have also seen from a number of data providers that they are in favor of this consortia prime approach. Again, here I'm referring in particular for the on-demand optical real-time data supply. And they also propose to lead such a consortia potentially for a contract which could also include the systematic data needs for very high resolution optical data. And then we have had very interesting feedback also from the service operators on the service approach. And we appreciate the input that we received on various industrial implementation concepts, which are interesting for us, and we will study that very carefully. Where you have given us concepts to onboard data providers and then to offer and facilitate this data supply service and related support functions. So we have seen ideas that are linked to mission planning, but also data acquisition, data request handling, and the broadcasting of these requests to all the data providers in such a consortia, but also data production and moreover rapid data delivery. And yeah, you came forward also with different ideas on platform service solutions, which is very interesting for us. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide on this, on this session from my side, which is when we asked you the question about rapid response for the VHR on-demand service, or the capacity to, yes, rapidly respond to the requests for very high resolution data. As you've seen, we have one question in the RFI, which was very much focusing on that aspect. We obtained from you interesting responses that brought up the idea of a European acquisition network or a virtual ground station network that could be set up for more efficient satellite tasking, uplink capability, but also reinforcing the data downlink solutions. And you expressed this idea and the potentiality of this being a concrete improvement for delivery timeliness and data latency. So we have on this last point, indeed, because it's a very interesting point for us, Katharina, also a set of questions or a poll that I think we should launch possibly now in order to see more feedback from.
Yes. Thank you very much, Becky. Yes, Sebastian, if you could. So it's exactly about this, the first poll. Maybe we can already announce it, Peggy. The first poll. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes, maybe we can go to the next slide. If there is a next slide, it should be maybe shown there, the slides.
No,
we don't have it anymore.
Yeah. So the first poll is, do you think that rapid response is a domain where improvements could still be made? So that's simple as yes or no. So the poll is coming up. And then poll 3 is, how could these be improvements be implemented? So this is the first poll. I guess it will go on. And this is the second. Thank you very much, Sebastian. So actually, Peggy, I think this one is the most important one, because the other one is yes, no, and the ones that answered no are not going to respond here. So I think maybe it's easier to keep on looking at this slide.
Yeah.
Let me check if there are questions in the meantime. No, so far no. Okay. So let's have a look at the responses here. It's about the same number of participants as the previous one, Peggy.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be very good to get good participation to this poll to see the trend in the replies very well.
Yeah. For me, I don't know for you, but it could be interesting to ask why nobody is so far interested to participate in a dedicated R&D program. Then why is that?
This is not, Katharina, what you said. It's a mix. It's also with that, but not only.
Okay, sorry, of the above solutions.
I mean, here it means that if ESA develop in rapid response,
yes, okay.
It makes sense not only to use that, but it makes sense to do it together with the activity Copernicus Contributing Missions. So a mix of the two, of the three. That's what is meant, according to me here.
Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, so I have a question. We have several questions, but let me start with this one. From Athena Trakas from OGC. What improvements can be made? What are the challenges and where are the gaps?
This is an interesting question. It's quite a
It's
far
on
away. Far-ranging. Yeah, I could start answering this. I would go back to the first slide that I had shown. Now we have various inputs there on needs that you presented, and we would be ideally in the evolution of the CCM activity tackling to get aligned as much as possible with the needs that you have expressed. So this would be one of the important aspects to take into account.
Yes, Athena, I think you were also on the session yesterday. Remember that there was this quasi real time and the latency and the lead time requirements. Basically, the data needed for emergency, they need to come as fast as possible. So they're stringent technical requirements for that. And I think that is a bit, what is still needs to be improved. Henri?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we see that we are still far to be able to provide meaningful data even the day after an event. So ideally, we should be able to do much faster. And once we have data the day after, we need to have that data arriving as fast as possible after acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned potentially is a program because that's one of the ideas that we have at ESA, something we call the rapid response. It's an idea which is called accelerator actually of ESA, and it's an idea that we are proposing to the member state actually tomorrow in a ministerial meeting, what we call intermediate ministerial meeting. That's one of the three ideas that we propose to invest at ESA. But that investment obviously is for a purpose. The purpose will be Copernicus amongst others. So rapid response and resilience. This is one of the potential new programs at ESA. And indeed, it makes sense to have, again, as I said, that program only hand in hand with the Commission, and particularly with the Copernicus services to really have the direct benefit of that.
Mm-hmm. So Athena clarified herself. She said, sorry, I was a bit fast. My question was more a comment on the Slido question. Depending on the improvements, we might need to have different aspects to implement, she clarifies. There's a question on, can you please clarify what do you mean by coordinated approach in the poll? So the coordinated approach.
The coordinated approach is something that we are going to us at ESA, we can reach with a form of consortium with companies working together, not necessarily under the lead of the data provider. It could be a service provider, but really a common tasking as part of the consortium. When I say common tasking, rapid tasking and rapid data delivery. But organized as part of the consortium of the companies providing the on-demand data. So let's say the rush data. That is coordinated approach. The opposite is the current situation where the coordination is done by ESA itself, but by another company. So we coordinated approach would mean a better integration amongst the company of that function of rapid tasking and rapid data delivery.
Okay. So I think, yeah, we should close this session here unless, so what do you think of the results so far? It's, was this what you expected, Henri and Peggy and Antonio?
For what concerned at least that poll, clearly is a mix. As I said, we at ESA we are going to create that new potential ESA program, so far accelerator, and indeed, as I said, we're expecting that the company said that makes sense only if it's done very jointly with the Copernicus activity, in particular with contributing the Copernicus Contributing Mission. So playing on one side the data buy, and the other side an ESA support to invest in improving the rapid response. It could be for now, it could be in the next 10 years with a space solution or other solutions. That has to be imagined.
Yes, okay. Okay, so I suggest we can close the session. Just one moment, please, because Gabriela, would you like to come in or?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much, Henri and Peggy. Gabriela, please go ahead before we go into the coffee break.
Indeed, so we will now have a short coffee break, but in the coffee break, we invite you all to answer to our polls on Slido for that. So we will make sure that you will have access to the polls. There are about 7 questions actually, and we would really appreciate your feedback on them. Thank you.
Yes. So we have the coffee, so don't forget the poll announced by Gabriela. We will have a coffee break now, and we will come back at 4 o'clock. Yes. Have a good break, and I would like to emphasize this is a workshop, a part of what Mauro and Elisabeth said. This is in our dialogue with industry. So please, companies, come up with questions. We appreciate very much the participants of public authorities that are here to listen in, but the main role on stage here is with industry. I hope that is clear. So thank you very much and have a good coffee break. Please don't forget the poll. Thank you. So it's 4 o'clock. We're back. We hope you had a very good coffee break. Sébastien, how is the poll going?
So regarding the poll, we have 18 participants.
Okay. Okay, so I think in the meantime, in the background, I think the participants still can fill in the poll, correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Yes, thank you. Maybe we can go then to the next session, which is on data licenses. So you can go to the next slide, yes. So this is just for, I'm not going to read it, but this is actually the questions that were asked in the RFI. So after this session, you can have a closer look to what has been asked. So a preliminary analysis of the answers. Can you please go to the next slide? Okay, the main observations that for now is that there's some support to maintain the current licensing scheme, which was explained yesterday, I think, and the structure as it exists, or payment as a function of use licenses. Some European new space companies are in favor of time-based licenses rather than of payment as a function of use. A significant number of respondents decided not to directly answer the questions. That was quite interesting, because what does it mean that it is not known, or that there is no opinion? And that's why we have the poll going on now, to understand and to stimulate a bit the discussion. The concept of contamination principle was mentioned in order to simplify and ensure a fair share of data. It was also mentioned the possibility for a governmental end user license agreement as a basis for discussion on the licensing scheme, in which then derivatives are accessible on a full, free and open basis already. Some participants or some repliers, they said they want a clear distinction between a licensing scheme for systematic data and one for on-demand. That could make sense. While there was one company that said, no, it has to be the same licensing. And the very interesting is that it was also mentioned the need to switch to a new business model for the data licensing scheme, such as subscription plans, data as a service concept. And that is really interesting. And we know already from our Copernicus emergency service that they would be very much interested in that. And I think Thomas, who's also online, he referred to it, that we are actually calling upon you companies or industry to come up with a new approach. And Thomas was referring that in the early days, we would buy a LP, we would buy a CD. But nowadays, if you want to listen to music, you're gonna stream music through one subscription fee. You have access to a multitude of music, and you see the same for the internet contracts that you have, Wi-Fi contracts, things like that. So that's what we are also looking into. Once again, remember, our emergency service doesn't know where a disaster is going to happen. They need immediately, or as soon as possible, images. And if we still stay within the current approach where we have one image and then another image, let's have a look if we should, or if we can move into another area in the future to look into the subscription plans. Possibility to opt out from CCM in the licensing scheme. And then there was also the data pricing per square kilometer, which is still the current approach for on-demand data within then a time-based license framework. So if you want to, summarizing as a multitude of replies here. So let's have a look maybe Sebastian, if you can pull up the results of the poll that we put forward. And Danielle Cantar, my colleague, is also here. Danielle, if you could please come forward. And the colleagues from ESA, of course. I think for this session, we have Peggy, I think. Peggy, correct? And Danielle. So, yeah, it's
Hello.
Yes, hi. So very interesting to see that the subscription scheme is indeed, that's new, huh? That's a new approach, that this is coming forward. Peggy.
Yes, indeed. In fact, we picked this up also in the contractual approach. This is very interesting indeed, and explore the usage of such schemes in this new evolution. Of course, it might also depend very much on, for the moment, only a few companies being able to provide such a capability, but it's very interesting to explore and to potentially bring it in.
There's a question coming in, and and the person is anonymous and asks, I would like to have some clarity of the different types of licensing schemes before providing a response. It would have been useful to understand that in order to reply better. I don't know, Peggy, if you could give a brief.
I am not a full expert on the licensing scheme. Of course, we have on the web portal I showed you before, this outreach function. There is the existing license agreement available. So this, you can go to our website for the CCM activity, and there's all the detail there.
Maybe Danielle, could you come on in this one? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. So there, of course, we are seeing different schemes, indeed. Subscription, payments, a functional view, and so on. Usually, the first thing that I would ask myself is, what are the rights that I'm getting from this? So there's two things to distinguish, really. The basic, back to the basic, what are the rights? And as you know, we are providing our service from the Copernicus service on a free, full, and open basis. Therefore, inside the terms of the license, being a subscription scheme, payment, functional views, whatever, what matters, first of all, are the rights that you are providing. Also, for a simplification, where the way it has been done is to have one license with different users and different rights per users, but at least one license. And then there are the annexes, which makes it complex, very much complex. So each of the different provider would think, oh yes, but I have this, oh, I want that. No, well, the best thing is to agree on the set of rights for the Copernicus system, agree on the different user and what are their rights, and then we move on. So simplification is a key word. Also, the rights for the user to be able to do what they want to do as a business. Free, full, and open for the Copernicus services, even up to the resolution of your data. It depends on the services, but sometimes could be the case. And then we can enter into different consideration, of course, when there is a limited dissemination of the information. I'm thinking about security. There are de facto a limitation on the user base. But on the principle of having your data as input and having as a free, full, and open information as an output, this is really the baseline. For the subscription and all of the other licensing scheme, yes, I mean, very interesting, and it could be for other than me. In fact, I was I've been looking at those licenses like 7 years ago. So I'm thinking about at that time. Now, there is no issue, but I really like to make the distinction between the content of the rights that is provided and what you can do with it, and then those subscription scheme. And the interest of those subscription scheme is that usually it is as a user, you would have the right to do what you are doing, and then the license cost would be commensurate to what this user is doing, which is different from having a batch, all get a lot of rights for everybody, and in fact we see that there are not a lot of uptake of those data. So thinking back, having something flexible, always protecting the right that's needed to provide the information, but thinking about how we can get better deal for exactly what we are doing with the data is always a good solution. And this can also allow to have more data, different type of data, because you, with your budget, you can do more. And therefore you can address and get into this new space and getting more provider of data rather than paying a lot of money for rights that indeed at the end are not used.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Daniel. I have a question, but maybe first, there's an anonymous question that came in. Has ESA tried negotiating a common license for the different suppliers? But I think, Danielle, you are more familiar with that, no?
Yes, that's the call for tender. And
Yes.
in the call for tender, there was a license that was proposed to the provider by Isa and Henri. Just do not hesitate, or if you. But this is how this was done. Of course, we have discussed with Isa the terms of those license. If we just talk about the license, for me, they are too complex. But of course, I mean, we came and it was always an improvement. Simplification of the licensing term is always important. It's important for the users. It's important for the uptake of the data, so that the normal people can understand what's in the license. And it's not an issue that there are limitations. There would be limitation, of course, but to be more. And I think there's still work that can be done on the simplification of the system.
Yeah. So maybe it's interesting. I had my colleague Frederick mentioning that to be aware that we have the Copernicus data and information, the full, free and open data information policy. But he said, please be aware that this, you just mentioned also, it's not applicable for security, for some security aspects. Maybe you could clarify this a bit,
yes.
Because, yeah, thank you.
I can clarify it. You have to distinguish the security aspect than the rights.
Mm-hmm.
If you take out the security and the fact that it's sensitive, we can disseminate to everybody. But it's important because if you have, on a security basis, it's time critical. You have a 3 months where you cannot provide the information, but after that, you can provide it. You can still disseminate on the free, full, and open. If you are limited because of the security issue to only a very specific subset of users, then you will never be able to release on a free, full, and open. Now, I must say, it's really a side issue, because comparing to what Copernicus is producing and really the aim of producing it, it is really the environmental monitoring information where it is essential that the data is provided as free, full, and open.
Mm-hmm.
And it is essential because for some of the program, people need to have the open data access. when you have to look at global warming and so on, and they may not look at data which are limited access, because it means that not everybody can reproduce the analysis that has been done. This is, of course, different for security. And the more you have a security restriction, of course, the more you have to restrict the user. But there's still this distinction on the right for the free, full, and open. What are your rights you are getting? And then the security restriction. It's important that it is treated as a different reality. But of course, I mean, if we get a very good deal for getting data for the security services, and most of the time those data are sensitive, restricted to a very small subset, and that there is a need to know who gets the data because it's so sensitive, then there is this can be accommodated for the security part.
Yes, okay, thank you, Daniel. I just want to clarify that what has been explained now is for the Copernicus Sentinel data and the Copernicus service information, full, free, and open. But when it comes to the contributing mission activity, and there are licenses in place. And Danielle, because there's the link with the anchor tenancy, if we say that we are an anchor customer and we expect the companies, new space companies, to also seek other customers and investors, then how does that align or not align with the full, free, and open request? I mean, what I want to say is that in the presentation yesterday, I confirmed, or I presented it as it's currently in place also, that these data are still licensed and that we are not seeking to in the first place to have them full, free, and open, because we do not want to take away the market.
Yes.
I hope that is clear. Yes.
Yes, to be extremely clear, you have an input. And those data are seen as input for the Copernicus services. So when we say that the output must be free, full, and open, it never says that the input must be free, full, and open. So there is in between the analysis of the input, and therefore there are a processing taking place, which is changing the value of your input. Either it disappears completely or it's completely changed. But of course, when we say that we want to disseminate Copernicus service information free, full, and open, it never means that your data will be disseminated free, full, and open. That must be extremely clear. Now, it is on the transformation needed from coming from an input to an output, which usually the legal discussion take place. What's the criteria from getting a primary product to a value-added product? What are the degree of change that you are ready to agree to so that it can be disseminated? When it is assimilated in a model, your data is not there anymore. When it is used for mapping, for example, if they are not taking for the map itself data which are free, full, and open, but the alienation, or if they are using your pixel but not the value in your pixel, this is where the discussion. But this is the minority of the cases.
Okay.
So it must be very clear.
Yes.
The input as a license. This license is negotiated. The rights on your data is recognized in this input. But when there is negotiation, there is the need that the output is free, full, and open. And there could be some exception, because we do accept exceptions, but we have never applied this exception at the moment, to my knowledge.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Danielle. A question came in to ask what is the difference between the subscription fee and payment as a function of use? So we, in the RFI, I think we explained that payment as a function of use means initial cost of data decreases as a function of the use, and the data becomes open when the usage passes a predefined threshold. So that's one thing. And then you have the subscription fee, but maybe Dania, you can explain a bit clearer what is then the difference with the subscription fee. It would be one fee paid. No, I mean, we can it could be differentiated with the user category. One fee that is being paid for access to how you said is a multitude of data stream, but not becoming open and full, not becoming open. I think it is what you just explained.
I would really make the difference between the rights that you are getting and the scheme for the license. Huh? So
Okay.
subscription fees, and I mean this is open. I'm just thinking by reading this. The subscription fee is you pay as much as I mean it really depends on the scheme. There would be a need for the, but it could certainly be either a subscription. You can have also a flat payment for the data that you can get. It could be paying for the amount of that. I must say, usually you would have a legal definition on those in a contract to exactly explain what is behind. And payment is a function of use. Of course, the more you use it, I would say the more you pay. Maybe there is a decrease of payment per unit. It's
it can differentiate. It doesn't. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I mean it really boils down to the business model of the way you address how to get the data, what's the cost with regard to the amount of data that you are consuming. If someone else is more familiar with those schemes, do not hesitate to be in them.
Is it a surprise for you that like more half of the participants of this poll said that they would propose a subscription scheme? Is that a surprise for you?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not, because I must say that from this, and the reflection is, and this is only me discussing, it's with the Sentinel data, we are trying to be coherent in addressing and getting the systematic data and so on. I must say that with regard to the procurement of the license, there is a degree of flexibility that we can get. The only issue is, if we have complete different system, because that makes a management difficulty. So in terms of rights management of the data, the access. So we have to be careful on all of those solutions. It is very interesting to have a flexibility, but if it's different for all of the providers, then you are getting into a nightmare of management on those rights, and again, in particular, on the rights that you are getting out of it.
Okay, that's maybe a very interesting conclusion or recommendation on this subject, flexibility. But we should see if we get the same scheme for all providers, like it is currently in place. Correct. The only question that I then have is, what about, would you make a difference, or would you see a difference for systematic data and on demand?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, obviously, when you look at it, you have really a custom-made request with the tasking for the on-demand. And then for the systematic, you can indeed mutualize the need of different users. There is a very clear difference. The thing is that the more rights you are negotiating for the systematic, then you still have quite a lot of work to tell the users that there are those data, and then to make sure that that they can get it. One of the way, and one of the easy way, was also to set accounts for the different user that can get the data. It's another way to say it is very flexible, but they know that they can get the data because they have the rights paid by Copernicus. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I think we should close. There's one question, but I think you just actually dealt with it. It says, I wonder how many of the participants to this event, to the RFI, have really read the Copernicus license in its entirety? Are we sure that the limited usage of the Copernicus data is due to licensing issues? I think the person, maybe because we were referring to the limited reuse by public authority, but I suggest that we close the session here until, unless maybe Peggy, would you like to have a closing word, or it's fine for you?
It's fine to close.
Okay, thank you, Danielle, and thanks to the participants for the questions. Let's go to the next and the last session of today. I see my colleague Thomas Johnson is already in his seat, ready to start the presentation. So Thomas, during the coffee break, the poll went on, so we will see it, but we'll do first your presentation on Cassini, correct?
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. So can you hear me well now?
Yes.
As you can see, I'm in the Commission's office from the from the beautiful wall behind me, the partitions. So welcome to the Cassini session, and thank you so much for your patience. We know that we've taken a lot of your time, but this is important in order to get the right kind of feedback so that we can prepare for the future setup of Copernicus step by step from now on and during the coming year. So we're going to talk a little bit about access to finance and how we can tie this to both the data buy scheme, but also to other actions that we are launching. And as you can see now on the screen, we've put together Cassini as a package of actions to help entrepreneurship in the whole space sector. And we are thinking about the space sector as both upstream companies and downstream companies. And the difficult thing here, obviously, is that there are companies with many different needs and many different products. So we're trying to put together an initiative that would suit many different types of companies. And one thing that seems to be common to many of those is that it's slightly more difficult to raise risk capital for space companies and downstream digital application companies also. So we thought that the first thing we need to reinforce and to have a much longer perspective on is a way to attract more venture capital funds to become active investors in space companies. And we think that we are very close to having this facility now. We're just in the decision-making procedure for InvestEU, the big program. And inside InvestEU, we have created a facility with money earmarked for investments into space companies. And that will have a total investment capacity of 1 billion euros or more, where we combine capital from the space budget with InvestEU, with EIF capital, and with private capital. And we hope that this will create a good leverage effect that has a long-term impact for Europe's space companies. And in addition to this, we have some actions that should be of interest to you. First of all, we will launch Cassini matchmaking in a couple of months' time, around January 22, which will be a series of events with different themes and with different target groups. So we can invite companies to to meet with, for example, large corporations and to meet with venture capital investors, so you can present your business plans and your and also pitch your funding needs. And the idea is also to strengthen networking between companies and with customers, so that you get like a Europe-wide network that will improve the chances of finding new business opportunities. And another thing is the Cassini Business Accelerator. And here we are targeting the growth stages of companies where it seems like it is often difficult to make that transition from a startup to a company that is able to increase its revenue year on year and show the kind of traction that venture capital investors are looking for, and that will make it easier for you to secure the investments you're looking for. So we hope that this could be of interest, and there are a few other things here that I will not mention right now. But let's go to the first question of the Slido, please. If you can activate the first question. And what I'm wondering here is whether your company has raised venture capital funding successfully in the last 2 years. So could I get a confirmation there from the control center that we are running the first question? Because maybe I can't see it here in the Slido application myself.
I think Sebastian is pulling it up.
We are on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and let's see if we go. So hopefully we have enough answers here. So it seems like 63%, or roughly 2/3, say that they have not raised venture capital funding successfully in the last 2 years. I mean, this could be because either you thought it was not the most appropriate way for you to secure funding, or it could be because it was difficult to finalize the funding round, and a number of other reasons. But roughly 1/3 of the respondents are saying that they did close a venture capital funding round. So that's an interesting first finding here. Could we launch the second question, please? What I would like to know now is whether your funding needs are short-term, let's say in the coming year, or if you have already secured funding for the next year and it's more of a question of, in 1, 2, 3 years, we need to raise more funding. Okay, so the results here are pretty interesting. 78% say that the funding needs are in the medium term, so for the next 2, 3 years. And about 1/5 say that it's for the next 6 to 12 months. Here, obviously, this is kind of tricky, because when you're speaking to investors, you don't want to say that we only have a runway of 6 months or something, then we're out of money and we have to accept any funding opportunity regardless of the terms for that funding. So it is clearly a lot better that you can say that we have already arranged for the funding of our company for the next year, and we are looking for long-term investors. So it's pointing in that direction. Very good. Let's launch question number 3, and it's about what kind of obstacles in raising finance that you have encountered, and I think we should have some multiple answers there. All right, so the most common reply here is the need for an anchor customer for credibility, 44%, and the second one is revenue growth and customer acquisition with 33%. This is pretty much what we were expecting, that these would be the top answers. Of course, under other, there could be several different things to be a bit more precise on why it was difficult to raise a funding round. But clearly here, it is not very common to say that we don't have enough collateral or intellectual property rights or something like that with the assets. And it doesn't seem like there's a lack of key investors either. So in my mind, it points to the need to be able to show metrics that you are attracting new customers and that you're able to generate new revenue. And there, the presence of an anchor customer, such as an institution, would be a helpful thing. Okay, great. Thanks very much for that. Shall we go to the next question? Do you have enough leads to venture capital funds to discuss the next funding round? Meaning, do you have the names and telephone numbers and so on, so you know who to discuss with, or would it be necessary for you to expand your network a little bit? Okay, so about 2/3 say that yes, we have enough leads to venture capital funds, and about 1/3 say that no, we don't have enough leads. But here, perhaps I'm a little bit surprised that so many of you are saying that you have enough leads, because we had very few venture capital funds that were active investing in space companies. We did run a kind of a pilot scheme from 2019 with the help of EIF to sign on 4 venture capital funds who have now started investing actively in space companies, but it's still early days there. So hopefully we can still build on this with the new Cassini fund. We can get more generalist funds perhaps to become interested in making space investments, and then you will have like a wider variety of investors to speak to, and also to make it easier to stitch together a syndicate of investors who can invest jointly. And that seems to be the formula, the success formula for several of the big investment rounds we have seen in the past year or so. I'm thinking about, for example, ISAR Aerospace and ISI and a few others there. All right, thanks very much. So next question, please. Would you be interested in joining a business accelerator program of 6 months if this is made specifically for space companies, and if this can help your company execute its expansion plan? So let's see here what we have coming up. Right. So currently, do we have 19 answers or something like that? It seems like roughly half of the respondents say that they're not so interested in a business accelerator, and this is fully understandable. Maybe it doesn't suit everybody, and maybe you're also a bit past the point in time when a business accelerator is the most interesting option for you. Here we have really tried not to make it another garage accelerator competing with all the others that are already present, but to focus on the growth stages. So, but still, I mean, if there are a number of companies who could benefit from this, to get experience from business coaches who've been working with internet companies and ICT companies and help them get on a fast growth trajectory, we think this could be beneficial. But of course, it's not something that we will push onto every single space company. Is for those who find this would be an interesting possibility. So thanks for that. And we have a last question here, which concerns the anchor tenancy. So let's move on to that question. Would an anchor tenancy contract for institutional satellite data acquisition help your company to raise risk capital? And look there, we have a whopping 95% saying yes, and funnily 5% saying no. So those who say no, perhaps you already have very good market traction. Right. So I think that reinforces the message we have already received, that trying to set up this kind of anchor tenancy approach would be a useful thing, and it could help a lot of companies to gain credibility, perhaps to make it easier both to sell to other customers on the private markets and to convince investors that you're on the right trajectory. So great. I think those were useful results, and I will keep those for future reference when we have a need to do that. So just to mention the thing about licensing, that was also an interesting result. And I mean, we can see in virtually all other economic sectors that the old way of doing licensing is on its way out the door, and we are getting new models. So regardless of whether it's about using stock images or playing music and so on, we are moving towards subscription models in many different sectors. For images, you can see that unsplash.com, for example, provides, you buy a subscription, or you can even use images for free that have no licensing fees. You don't even have to attribute them. But you can also have a subscription, I think. If you've thought about all the music that you see to the videos that are on YouTube, where does that music come from? Because it's very tricky to get music, the music rights, and put them on YouTube videos. Well, actually, this music is supplied by a company called Epidemic Sound, and you just sign up for a subscription. I think they even have a free version there, and you can use all the music you like when you publish videos on YouTube. So hey, that's the secret to getting much more like flexible and straightforward licensing deals that are available at your fingertips. And it's the same in all other sectors. We are moving towards a more simple way of accessing data and reusing it in various ways. So interesting to hear this poll indicating a preference, but we would probably need to have more input in order to understand how it could be conceived. So in agreement with Katarina and Daniel and the others. Right. So any questions?
We're not there. Yes, thanks, Thomas. Thank you very much. Very interesting results so far. Yeah. There are two questions that came in. I just have to tell the participants, apparently, if you submit a question, it appears in another session, but you are able to ask a question. The two questions, Thomas, are anonymous. The first one is, how do you look upon a PPP within the Cassini framework?
A public-private partnership.
Yes.
So, I mean, it depends on what area and what problem you're trying to solve. But look at, for example, the slide here. If for in-orbit demonstration, we have been funding this in previous years, but there are a couple of problems that we need to solve here. First of all, speed it up, and hopefully be able to offer this kind of support and slots on launches quicker and to more companies, so that they can get the kind of validation of their products that they need. So this is a kind of a public-private partnership, I guess. And hopefully we can also offer it on more types of launches with different weight classes and so on. You see that we have mentioned secure connectivity. So we did a kind of call for tender aimed at SMEs to try to get more information on what kind of plans and products and services would they envisage for the future in terms of internet connectivity via satellite. So that's one step, and then we'll have to reflect on how we will set up the next flagship program of the European Union with internet connectivity, and where it's perhaps better for private companies to provide services, and where it is necessary for an institution to be either to be in charge of the supply of services, or to be a contracting authority. So okay. This is yet again a kind of a public-private partnership. And if you have other ideas behind your question, then could perhaps be more precise.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, there's going to be a networking session at 5 o'clock also. So if we can discuss further. There's a last question, Thomas, but I have to ask you to be short because we have 1 or 2 minutes left.
Yeah, and then we have the final speeches.
Yeah, there's the conclusions, and then we have the general networking session. It's going to be like yesterday. It's the Commission, ESA, and companies that can come in, and we have like an informal talk. But the last question is from Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous. I wonder how many of the oh, sorry. It is, are there any constraints or limitations to a given company to access to the Cassini offer? We have already identified small space companies that exist for a while, 5 to 10 years, that want to change their position in the value chain and become new space operators. Are they eligible? It's a very interesting question.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we will try to be as open as we can for both Cassini Business Accelerator and for Cassini Matchmaking. It's meant to be not only startups, but also companies that have been established since some time, and it is not really clear if you ask what is a startup. Are you 5 years old or 10 years old or something? And that it has been defined a bit differently in different contexts. So we'll try to keep it as open as possible, and we hope to see also space companies that have been around for a while and they want to expand their business opportunities and maybe find customers in other countries and so on to join Cassini Matchmaking. And there will be different themes for the different events. So hopefully there will be something for everybody. So keep an eye open when we start publishing and invite companies.
Okay.
And the same thing for the Cassini Seed and Growth Funding Facility. There, we're not targeting only startups, but it's meant also for medium-sized companies and even for mid-caps. So it could be companies with 500 employees and a rather sizable revenue stream.
Okay, excellent.
It depends a bit on what venture capital funds are willing to sign up and what are their investment strategies. That's the most important point.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we could talk for more and 1 more hour or so, but let's continue then in the networking session. I would like for now close this part. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Absolutely, thank you.
Will you be joining the networking session? Will you have time?
Yeah, sure, for a while.
Okay, excellent. So without further ado, I checked there are no further questions for now. I would like to close it to thank all of you, and then I would like to see if the closure, which is gonna be given by Head of Unit Guillaume de la Brosse, sorry. He's Head of Unit of B2, Innovation, Startups and Economics. You're online, Guillaume? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, hi. So sorry, did you check your email? Did you see the conclusion? Yes, okay. So thank you very much. It has been a very interesting workshop, but I give you the floor so you can close the workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katarina, and it's really a pleasure to to be with you. I understand that you have really 2 exciting days and very interactive days. So I very much like to support and to thank you for what you have done. Copernicus is very much user driven. So I think it's very important to have you say and see on the basis of how you feel it, how you see it, that we really think about the way we want to change or to adjust Copernicus. So we are today at the end of the second half-day workshop. The objective today was to discuss the revision of the Copernicus Contributing Mission, and I'd like to give you a bit of an overview on the outcome of the different polls that you have participated in. In the different session this afternoon on anchor tenancy, contractual approach, data licenses, and Cassini, we discussed different viewpoints. And as I said, it has been quite rich as an interaction with industry, and I'd like to highlight a few key messages. I think in the session 1 on anchor tenancy session, what I'd like to highlight as a key takeaway is that it is important to have a common understanding or common meaning of what we mean with a new space company or new space method. It's a very trendy word, but clearly we need to have a common understanding of what it means. Now, looking at the poll, do you prefer a contract? That question showed preference for a contract for data buy or data services, but actually there was no votes, no support for co-design. So that's an important point we need to keep in mind. And for data buy and data services, we have 68%, whereby for data buy, we only have 23%, and for data services, 9%, and for co-design, as already discussed, we have 0. Moving to the session 2, contractual approach and central infrastructure. Here there is a high interest in long-term contract and commitment for data buy, which is the anchor tenancy approach for above 5 to 10 years. Session 3 on data licenses. Here the recommendation is that there is a difference between the input and the output. The output meaning Copernicus information that is full, free, and open, and the input is licensed. And the outcome of the poll shows clearly a shift to an innovative approach via subscription schemes instead of the current licensing scheme in place of CCM data. Now moving to the session 4 on Cassini. Key takeaways is that the main obstacle is the need for anchor customer for credibility, revenue growth, and acquisition. And actually, it's good to know that 1/3 of the companies confirmed that they managed to raise venture capital. So that's an excellent news. Also, it's important to highlight that for most of the companies, funding is needed for the next 2-3 years. And almost 100%, so 95% of the participants stated that an anchor tenancy contract would help the company to raise risk capital. We all know that indeed getting a contract with a public entity has a positive spillover effect and can really, it has a kind of de-risking effect and can attract much more private investors. So what we take out of this interaction is the interest of industry to become part of the Copernicus Contribution Mission activity. And we will really carefully assess all the different suggestions and takeaways from those two days. Now we will invite you to take a small break and join the networking session that will take place right now. So it's not the end of the day for you. Gabriel will fill you in on that, but I'd like to wish you, all the speakers and the participants, for your contribution, all the colleagues internally for the great commitment and for what they've done over the 2 days, and of course the communication team for making that workshop a big success. Katharina, thank you very much. Colleagues, I wish you a very nice networking moment right now. Thank you very much, Katharina.
Yeah, thank you very much, Guillaume. So we're at the closure, but like Guillaume just said, let's listen to Gabriel regarding the networking session.
Yes, so we're a bit ahead of time, so we will start the networking session in 7 minutes, so you have time to have another coffee if you wish to do so. And then the networking session will take the same format as yesterday, so it will be the European Commission, ESA, and companies that wish to participate. So we will see you in 7 minutes at 5 p.m.
Yeah, so on the format, it's an informal session, Gabriel, like yesterday. I think it was easy going. It's not recorded. It's like an open discussion, what you normally could have if you were physical at a conference and everybody's relaxed. So I think the suggestion yesterday by Thomas was, please take a beer so that you relaxed. So that's a bit in a relaxed way discussing further, because there was one question pending. We can take that. And so that's it. Like Guillaume said, we would like to thank everybody for today. It has been very useful, I think, also for the ESA colleagues, without a doubt. And yes, see you within 6 minutes then. Thank you very much.
Yes, and if I may add something, we really encourage you as well to share your feedback on how you found the format of this event, if you liked it and what we could have done better. That would also really help us in the future.
So participants just can stay in this room. That's correct, huh?
Indeed.
Yeah, so there will be a pop-up, join the networking session.
Yes, indeed. So, Katharina, the breakout session is launched, so people can join this breakout session on the right of their screen. Sorry, they just need to click join the session. We can see that we have already 2 participants inside, so Mr. De Groove and Mr. Hoffman.
Okay.
So the rest of the people have 5 minutes to join this networking session.
Okay, thank you. So on my screen, it's not appearing, but it will appear, so that it's like a label that says, please join the networking session. Okay, thank you.